Hey everyone, welcome into a very special Dom Time tonight. Thanks for joining us, and we'd really like to hear you weigh in. I'm sure you've been following, how could you not, the Trayvon Martin case. Breaking development today, a judge has said that the defense will be able to introduce information that Trayvon Martin had marijuana in his system on the night of the fatal shooting by George Zimmerman. There have been riveting moments in this, and we have three great guests tonight to talk about it. First of all, George Perry, who's joined me on the radio. George is a former federal organized crime prosecutor, state prosecutor, and now practices law in Philadelphia. And he came to my attention because he writes for the Philadelphia Inquirer. I've seen him over the years. And his piece in Philly.com a few months ago, or a few weeks ago at least, on Trayvon Martin, to me, was as logical and as well thought out as anything I've seen. So, George, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Asa Khalif is also someone that we know. Asa is the president of Racial Unity. He was one of 7 speakers at the Trayvon Martin Brotherly Love Candlelight Vigil. He's a vocal advocate for social justice. And joining us in New York is Daniel Marie. Daniel is the creator of the Million Hoodies movement. He's a filmmaker, strategist, and social entrepreneur. Daniel, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us tonight. And tell me, Hi, Daniel. What's your overall impression now that we've seen the prosecutors rest? We've seen the beginning of the defense, and some people predict by mid next week we might see this case go to the jury. What has stood out to you?
Yeah, well, thanks. First of all, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the show with you. You know, it's been riveting for me to watch. I've been doing a lot of traveling lately, so I've had to tune in where I can, when I can. But it's been good to see the lively debate that's been happening around the different issues of the trial, and I know the blog sphere has been lighting up. And you know, there's a lot to discuss, but it's great to see that people are open and having their opinions. And I think what we're happy about here with the Million Hoodies movement is just that, you know, George Zimmerman is on trial and it's moving forward, and we hope that justice will take its course.
Well, we certainly all recommend that. George Perry, the theme, I think, of your article, at least the pre and discussions I've had on the radio with you, is we have two worlds going on here. We have one, what's going on in the courtroom, right, which is relatively garden variety, I think, versus the media expectations out here, which are framing this around race.
Right.
Is that your impression of what's going on?
Yeah, the build-up to the trial was shaped by the media, and a lot of the media coverage was simply misleading. If you take, for example, the way NBC handled the 9/11 tape of Zimmerman reporting Trayvon Martin's presence to the 9/11 operator, they spliced the tape and in effect doctored it so it sounded like this Zimmerman volunteered the information that Martin was black, when in fact that was a response to a direct question from the 9/11 operator. Is he white, black, Hispanic? And he said he's black. Well, they eliminated the question and had Zimmerman saying there's somebody here, he looks like he's not up to no good, he's black. And that's just one example of the way that they doctored the tape.
Let me go back to Daniel. Daniel, I see this as more about what's going on in the courtroom, and my fear is people not watching it, as the four of us might be, have expectations going into it and see this about race. CNN, shamefully to me over the weekend, said that black manhood is being put on trial here, that African Americans are suspect, and that's what this is about. Do you see this being about race?
Well, I think there's no doubt that race has played a role in this and continues to play a very active role. But for me, you know, I can only speak personally and on behalf of Million Hoodies. For us, we've always tried to, as much as possible, take race out of the issue. You know, we said very early on, you know, we can all identify with the fact that George Zimmerman saw Trayvon Martin as being something that he really isn't. And we've all been in those types of situations, whether we're black, white, Hispanic. It just so happens that we do have a system of institutional injustice in this country that does disfavor minorities and African Americans.
All right, hold that thought.
There's no doubt that race.
Okay, let me ask you, Asa Khalif, do you share that this is about race in the form that Daniel Marie has just told us?
I think that part of it is about race. There was, according to George Zimmerman, there were incidents in the neighborhood, break-ins and unrest in the neighborhood, and they were primarily by Latinos, and African Americans. So that was mostly the main reason why he targeted Trayvon Martin. I personally believe had Trayvon Martin had blonde hair and blue eyes and maybe a skateboard as opposed to iced tea, a hoodie, and Skittles, we would not be talking about
Let's
a
talk
murder.
about the hoodie, and then I'll bring Daniel in, who's done this march. There's been a lot of people that have centered on the hoodie.
Yes.
And I got to tell you, I'm not sure the temperature that night. George may know or whatever. This wearing of the hoodie and not being seen, that's a problem for a lot of people, not just racially,
No.
but it's something that creates a certain mystery or fear here.
No, I agree, but that particular night in question, it was raining.
Right.
And so, when it's raining like that, of course, he wanted to protect his head and protect himself as much as he could as he made his way from the store to the house. So it's very common to put a hoodie on or
Okay,
to
but
cover your
Daniel,
head.
how about even Geraldo Rivera on my show saying he would advise his sons, who are a minority, Latino basically, not to be wearing a hoodie in a lot of these situations, not to be coming into 7-Eleven. And I live in Germantown. I live in a multiracial neighborhood here in Philadelphia. I see this with kids at times that are even, when it's fairly warm out, and yet it's billed a Million Hoodie March. Why? What are you trying to symbolize with the hoodie part of this?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Dom. For me, I personally felt discriminated against for being an African American person walking down the street in a hoodie. It really, to a certain extent, has nothing to do with what I'm wearing. It's the fact that I'm perceived as being up to no good, just as Trayvon Martin was. So for me, the hoodie was the symbol of people being afraid and of suspicion. I wanted to turn that into something positive, something that we could all wear to unite around and support Trayvon's family.
All right, very good. Well, Daniel, thank you very much. We'd like to call upon you again because we'll be on this in future shows here. Thanks for joining us tonight in Philadelphia. Appreciate it very much.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's Daniel Marie. He is the creator of the Million Hoodies movement. In studio with me is a guy with vast prosecutorial experience and legal experience, George Perry. We'll talk with him next about particular aspects of the case. One I know I've gotten a multitude of calls on, which is, come on, George Zimmerman provoked this, ergo it seems to be he at least should be guilty of manslaughter, if not second-degree murder. And we'll talk with Asa, too, about this and what happens if Zimmerman is found not guilty next week or toward the end of next week. That's all straight ahead with your calls on Dom Time.